Welcome back to The Breakdown with me, NLW. It's a daily podcast on macro, Bitcoin, and the big picture power shifts remaking our world. What's going on, guys? It is Friday, July 25th, and that means it's time for the Friday Five. Before we get into that, however, if you are enjoying The Breakdown, please go subscribe to it, give it a rating, give it a review, or if you want to dive deeper into the conversation, come join us on the Breakers Discord. You can find a link in the show notes or go to bit.ly/breakdownpod. All right, friends, back with another Friday Five. Kind of a quiet week, although a lot of things that are brewing that will be relevant for the future. We have some pretty significant institutionalization stories, progress being made on the market structure bill, which is extremely consequential. So sit back and let Scott Melker and I tell you all about it.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. Let's talk about really big numbers. We've got Dan Tapiero here, friend of the show. Sees crypto ecosystem reaching 50 trillion as he launches the new 500 million fund under 50T rebrand. It used to be 10T for those who remember, because he thought crypto would go to 10 trillion. I always mocked him and said, why so bearish? I guess he listened.
Changing times require changing updates, you know?
Yeah, I mean, 50 trillion is a big number. Actually, though, I mean, stable coins count as a part of the crypto market cap. And if they explode to, 10, 20 trillion over the next 10 years, this is pretty doable.
Yeah, I mean, 50 trillion it sounds insane, except when you realize it's a 10x from here. And also that, there's a calculation going on here about sort of the general increase in global wealth. What portion of that, resides in crypto? What portion of that is represented on crypto? There's a lot that goes into that. I think, Dan is a sophisticated investor. He's not saying Dogecoin goes to 1 trillion or anything like that. This is a much sort of more comprehensive prediction.
If I put that headline, I would get another warning and get a strike. Dogecoin was going to do that. They would tell me that it was harmful content again. Here we go, though, with our first real story of the day. Senate will end up passing House version of crypto market structure, says Tom Emmer. This isn't exactly the story. Obviously, the story, as we know, is that Genius was passed into law last week. Going to the Senate, you actually unpacked this exceptionally well on the breakdown this week. Usually there's not much deference to the House from the Senate. They kind of rewrite their own bill and send it back and say, hey, guys, sign this. We actually got an interesting and quick write-up from the Senate, and it's not exactly the House version. So maybe you can explain this further.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we didn't really get a full version of the bill, or at least what we would have expected. The House version of this bill is, hundreds of pages of long. What we got from the Senate was 20-something pages, maybe 30-something pages. It was really short relative to what you would expect. And the main point of difference was around how to handle the securities commodities classification sort of piece of things, right? Whereas in the House bill, there's a whole system for how a security-like thing becomes not a security. In the Senate version of the bill, they're basically just treated as not a security a priori, because they're named as some different type of asset class, an ancillary asset. It harkens back to the original Lummis-Gillibrand bill from a few years ago, sort of closer to their conception. The key point, I think, for now is not which of these wins, but it's more of how it gets reconciled from here. The Senate bill is also sort of missing the CFTC portion of how to deal with things. It's really just focused on handing over a bunch of stuff to the SEC. So it feels very starting place rather than complete, but it continues to advance the conversation. And I think it creates space now for people who are actually interested in this to have the discussion around the right way to handle this thorny question that's been at the center of things forever, which is, are they securities? Are they not? And if they're not, what are they?
Yeah, they seem to have improved at least slightly and addressed a few more concerns. But even David Sachs said in an interview, he doesn't expect this to be law before, late September, maybe October, November. So clearly we're still in the early innings of it. I think it's just encouraging to see progress so quickly out of the Senate.
It felt to me like a momentum continuation thing, right? If they put out something to discuss, then people discuss it. It keeps the balls moving. If they don't, then, we get drowned out and moved on to other topics. And so, that's sort of how it reads to me. It's taking a bunch of concepts from, previous legislation or legislative efforts, putting them together, and particularly highlighting things that are different about how they might want to approach it from the House bill. So that's where the conversation naturally trends.
Yeah, and sort of in line with politics, crypto industry boosted lobbying to pass coveted stablecoin bill. Not sure how much of a story there is here when we know that the crypto lobby is now willing to spend, lobby, and push for anything that they want. But 6.9 million in the second quarter, a 21% increase over the previous 3 months. So obviously there's a heavy appetite from our industry to participate in Washington and get things done.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, 6.9 million. These are lobbying numbers for ants. Like,
Yeah. What is this?
yeah. No, but this is definitely we haven't had very many actual summer weeks so far, but Bloomberg writing a story about that basically says when important legislation came to be a focus, crypto lobby spent more on important legislation. Like that's really what the story is. So I don't think there's much to see here. The crypto lobby continues to be an important force in Washington. And, look, one thing that is interesting, if you're going to try to draw some actual interesting notes from this, is in the immediate aftermath of Trump winning, there was a bit of a fracturing, a bit more fracturing of the crypto lobby than we had seen, which had been pretty consolidated when we all had a common enemy, right? Which is very natural. Like you have a common enemy, so everyone comes together, they put aside their differences, everyone embraces even XRP, and we all kind of fight together. In the immediate aftermath, when it seemed like, crypto was going to have an easier time of it, or, now was the time to kind of go on the offense, there was a bit more splintering. Subsequent to that, as these key legislative pieces have come up, there's been, it's been interesting to track how much the crypto lobby is acting with one voice versus sort of, fractional and multi different tier of voices. So to the extent that you are watching things, rather than just how much the crypto lobby spends, watching to see, are the groups that are representing Coinbase saying the same things that are representing sort of broader industry groups? Like those are the types of things to watch for.
Absolutely.
Today's episode of The Breakdown is brought to you exclusively by Grayscale. Grayscale is almost certainly a name you know. They've been offering exposure to crypto for over a decade now and offer over 20 different crypto investment products ranging from single asset to diversified to thematic exposure to crypto and the broader crypto industry. They have long been innovators at the intersection of TradFi and crypto. And one of the benefits for a lot of us is that Grayscale products are available right through your existing brokerage or IRA. Now, of course, investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. For more information and important disclosures, visit grayscale.com. Go to grayscale.com to explore their full suite of crypto investment products and invest in your share of the future.
Moving on, the next topic here is the state of alt season. Crypto's altcoin season stumbles out of the gate being the first here, but you had a great breakdown. Sort of the implication is alt season the beginning of the end here? But alt season or exit liquidity, parsing the crypto market's next move. And then we can obviously dig into everything that's happening around ETH and treasury companies here. But interesting take here, crypto's altcoin season stumbles out of the gate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the question is just, we are unmoored right now because we have so routinely had these sort of the precedent of the 4-year cycle that we could lean back on and reference against, right? And everything was either this is how it was working then, or how, or it's doing a thing that's different than it was working then. Now we have such a different set of forces that I think no one really has a super clear idea of where we sit in the cycle. What the cycle means is up for grabs. And so I think that we're trying to kind of read a lot of those different signals into things when we might just be in a completely different paradigm now.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But moving on, we do know that certain altcoins have been moving like crazy, and that is Ethereum, namely, but Solana also. But Bitmine Immersion's ETH stash doubles to more than 2 billion in corporate Ethereum treasury race. I had Matt Hogan on yesterday. He talked at length about this demand shock. Clearly, there's something going on with Ethereum here. I mostly attribute it to Tom Lee and the increasing interest. It just finally got the catalyst it needed to trade at a reasonable price.
Yeah, I mean, look, so there is a lot of like catch up that's going on right now, which is important to note. Secondly, you and I have talked about how it's been surprising to some extent ETH's underperformance for the last, period of time, just because it seemed like there was such a clear opportunity for it to be Bitcoin is the exposure to store of value, ETH is this, exposure to everything else in crypto. But for whatever reason, it's taken this amount of time to get here. I think that there's a confluence of narrative and real factors that are helping shape this. The fact that people are pointing to Ethereum in sort of mainstream financial analysis as a beneficiary of the stablecoin regime passing creates a little bit of a tailwind for them, right? And then you pointed out, larger analysts like Tom Lee talking about it. That's another tailwind. The fact that there's now these corporate treasury structures, which creates a kind of a run back the playbook type of thing for people who have watched the Bitcoin gains and wonder if it could just happen again. All of these things add up. And then you slap them into the fact that relatively speaking, it has underperformed. Looks like a good trade.
Yeah, I think it's going to keep going. Personally, it's been interesting actually to watch today. I haven't checked in the last hour or so, but Bitcoin had a nice little correction, kind of traded down to the bottom of the range, and Ethereum continued up. And so we don't even have that thing where Ethereum falls a little more than Bitcoin because there's a slight panic in Bitcoin. It clearly is untethered to some degree.
Yeah. I think, again, Ethereum recapturing its place as sort of dominant number two and representing sort of something different for an investor makes sense to me. I think, again, the thing to watch is how far down the alt spectrum does it go? Does it extend to Solana? Does it extend, even beyond that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see. Time will tell, certainly. And this kind of brings us into treasury companies in general. One of the big stories of the week. David Bailey's fund is up 640% after converting Trump on crypto. But the real story here is that what the fund does, this is effectively Nakamoto, to my understanding, to 10K Capital. But they're a treasury company that not only buys Bitcoin, but invests in other treasury companies.
Yeah. The story here that people have been interested in is, well, let me take a step back. Everyone is looking for signs that treasury companies could ruin the party for everyone. That's where everyone is, right? Are these things going to be our big blow up of this cycle? And so what the story has attracted attention is around ownership concentration, right? Because ownership concentration is the type of thing that can transmute wobbles and problems in one company to a larger sort of industry phenomenon. For people who are looking for the negative signs, it's obviously a fairly hyped narrative. And it's hard to imagine that company number 300 can really do well. I mean, even these guys are talking about how many deals they're still seeing, It's just insane. The flip side is, leverage. These things aren't super levered. It doesn't have some of the hallmarks of previous blowups where two different hedge funds were just trading back and forth with one another, but famous last words. But I think that's the reason that people are interested is that everyone has their super spidey senses on,
It's hard not to. It's crypto PTSD. You have to know who the next main character of the collapse is going to be and what's going to do it. And listen, I have said exactly what you did. Company 300 is going to be bad. The question is whether that actually matters for the crypto market or just for the shareholders that were dumb enough to buy company 300.
The scary thing is that the catalyst that rips us down very rarely comes from the most predictable place, So it's like, what is there to look at that's not a treasury company is probably a more fruitful.
We certainly didn't see SBF really coming. So point well taken. But what we have seen coming is the institutions. JPMorgan Chase explores lending secured by clients' cryptocurrencies. This came coincidentally, I'm sure, right on the back of Schwab saying they were basically going to do the same thing 3 days before. But this isn't the only sign of a massive bank and institution coming in a different way than maybe we had seen announced. Goldman Sachs, BNY, to record money market funds on blockchain, obviously behind BlackRock and Franklin Templeton et al., who have been tokenizing treasuries here for a while. But it's pretty clear the biggest banks, the biggest financial institutions, Wall Street is coming, and they're coming to participate in every single part of this.
Yeah, we've fully tipped into this is just the norm at this point. It's all of the cracks of available products are getting filled in. It's like water flooding over a topography. Everything that could be a product is going to become a product. I think to some extent, extending this from the conversation that we were just having about where blowups are going to come, all we really need to avoid with this cycle is some insane blow up that makes people sort of want to run away from crypto forever. And look, the best down cycle that we can imagine is one where retail never fully gets in this time and, gets a little bit bored again because things get boring. And what we're left with is every institution in the world offering every type of crypto product. And it's just as normal as can be. And that's sort of where things are headed right now, is just the complete and utter boring normalization of everything.
Yeah. exactly where we're headed. But this isn't boring. Perpetual futures have arrived in the US on Coinbase. I mean, this is crazy. This is a humongous story that would have been the biggest story ever if it didn't happen among all of these other stories. But the fact that you can go full BitMEX now on Coinbase as an American is just massive.
Well, you can go a tenth of BitMEX, right? I think
Okay, you
10x
can go
leverage. 10x
10x, which
leverage,
is
by the way, is
a
still like
lot.
very, very
Monster
high for
leverage. Yeah.
relative speaking. But look, perps are one of the more interesting actual kind of financial or market vehicle innovations that the crypto industry has had. There's, really interesting benefits that they have over other types of structures. This, I think, is emblematic of another piece of the institutionalization story, which isn't just banks and traditional kind of financiers offering crypto products, but Wall Street taking cues from the way that crypto does things and actually starting to integrate them into the mainstream system. Again, hold aside like the exact leverage numbers. There are really interesting reasons to like perps as an available instrument from a market liquidity perspective. So I don't know. I think that it's a fairly positive thing. Again, not speaking to the leverage piece of it, but just having this instrument as an available tool alongside everything else, it feels inevitable to me, I guess.
Yeah. I agree. I just had a glitch over here 1 second. And finally, this was kind of a honorable mention story, but pretty big. Christie's offers $1 billion in luxury real estate to buyers paying with crypto. Basically, the auction house slash real estate creating an entire new part of the business here to specifically sell real estate to buyers that are willing to pay with crypto. This is one of those things that has happened a little bit, but still a huge story. And once again, will get completely forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that one of the things that's pretty clear is although retail hasn't moved back in fully, although, again, we talked about it last week, how there are some signs of it coming back to life. A lot of the products that these companies are building for, and a lot of the sort of feeling of force driving them into this space is high net worth crypto buyers, which represent a big, juicy market that they want to get access to. And this is sort of further result of that. So, I think we're going to see more of this. And I think it's going to be less and less about novelty and capturing a headline, which is what all this stuff was about 3-4 years ago when you saw it, and more about there are these extremely valuable niche markets of sort of, crypto holders that are worth developing products for.
Hey, we're done. But did you see the most awkward moment in TV history yesterday that I will say could be the best new sitcom ever? I
I did
mean,
not see that.
I would watch this show day in and day out. I don't know if it's The Odd Couple or Dumb and Dumber, Perfect Strangers.
No,
You choose.
the only Trump media that I saw yesterday was South Park, and that was
I didn't see it.
speaking of awkward.
I mean, Trump shows up at the Fed building. Powell, as if he's like the contractor or something. Is not like, do you think that this is maybe below Powell's pay grade to be in a hard hat down there explaining the expenses of a construction project? Tim Scott's not even wearing a helmet. So the
Yeah,
two of them are wearing a helmet completely for show. Trump pulls out a document that's like, this is up to 3.1 billion. Powell says, that's for a building we did 5 years ago, man. I mean, this was pure insanity and comedy. I don't know where we're at in the simulation, if we're 99% through and things are about to get bad, but it is wild.
yeah, it's something, all right. Scott, I think we've finally had our first true summer week this week. When we were looking through and preparing this, I was like, man, this is actually a summer week.
It's a summer week relative to a 2025 spring week, but relative to a previous fall week, it's still more action than we would ever have.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It's just we are jaded and bored. If we don't have, I mean, these stories are massive.
Whatever. I'm just saying everyone needs to touch some grass.
I agree. Go touch grass. Thank you, NLW. We'll be back next week, guys. Check out the breakdown. It's where I get all the ideas now for my show. So yeah, just go, hey, see, he talked about it on the breakdown. Breakdown again. Awesome show and awesome follow. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, man.
Later.